Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening.
Tom had always been a loner, preferring the solitude of his expansive farm on the newly colonized planet of New Haven to the bustling city centers where most of humanity congregated. The planet, with its vast green landscapes and clear blue skies, reminded him of Earth's more tranquil places. He had chosen this life, a life of peaceful isolation and simple farming, away from the complexities of interstellar politics and social strife. It was on a crisp evening in the early fall of New Haven's seasonal cycle that Tom's quiet life was dramatically interrupted. He was outside, repairing a fence on the outer edge of his property, when a bright streak tore across the early evening sky. It was not uncommon to see shooting stars on a planet with such a thin atmosphere, but this was different, slower, controlled, and headed straight for his land. The object crashed a few hundred meters from where he stood, throwing up a cloud of dirt and debris and leaving a shallow crater in the soft earth of his west field. Tom, driven by a mix of concern and curiosity, hurried towards the crash site, his heart pounding in his chest. As he approached, he could make out the shape of a small craft, unlike any human engineering he was familiar with. It was sleek and metallic, with a smooth, aerodynamic design that suggested it was built for atmosphere entry and exit. Cautiously, he circled the craft, looking for signs of life or movement. What he found shocked him to his core. Inside the craft, through a cracked but still intact transparent canopy, lay an alien. She was unlike any being Tom had ever seen or heard of. Her skin was a luminescent blue, shimmering slightly in the fading light, and her features, while humanoid, possessed an ethereal quality that made her seem as though she belonged to the stars. Without a second thought, Tom sprang into action. He managed to pry open the craft's hatch using some tools from his belt. The alien inside was unconscious but breathing, her chest rising and falling with a steady rhythm that eased some of Tom's immediate worries. Knowing he couldn't just leave her there, Tom gently lifted her from the wreckage. Surprisingly light, she felt almost frail in his arms as he carried her back to his house. Once inside, he laid her carefully on his couch, covering her with a blanket and checking for any obvious injuries. Finding none, he sat back, watching over her and waiting for her to wake, his mind racing with questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? Why had she crashed on his farm? As night fell and the stars began to twinkle in the clear sky above, the alien's eyes fluttered open. They were a vivid silver, reflecting the light of the room in a way that seemed almost liquid. She looked around in confusion, her gaze finally settling on Tom, who offered a reassuring smile. "Hey, you're safe here," Tom said gently, realizing she might not understand him. "I'm Tom. You crashed on my farm. I brought you inside to make sure you're okay." To his surprise, she responded, her voice a soft musical tone that filled the room. "I understand you, Tom," she said, each word careful and precise. "I am Arila. Thank you for saving me." The simplicity of the moment, the peaceful exchange despite the extraordinary circumstances, marked the beginning of something neither of them could have anticipated. As Arila looked up at him with a mix of gratitude and wonder, Tom felt a profound sense of responsibility for her well-being. Little did he know, this unexpected encounter would lead him on a journey not just across the stars, but into the depths of human and alien emotion. Over the following days, Arila began to regain her strength under Tom's attentive care. Tom's home, a modest farmhouse surrounded by fields and woods, became a sanctuary for Arila as she recovered from the crash. The language barrier between them was minimal, as Arila's species had the ability to absorb and replicate languages through limited telepathy, a revelation that both fascinated and unnerved Tom at first. Tom introduced Arila to the basics of human life on New Haven. They started with the food. He was careful to offer her simple, mild flavors initially, observing her reactions to ensure nothing was harmful. Arila was particularly amused by the concept of cooking, something her people did not require in their diet, but she enjoyed the flavors and the warmth it brought. As she grew stronger, Arila became more curious about her surroundings. Tom took her on walks around the farm, showing her the various crops he cultivated and explaining the workings of a human agricultural operation. Arila listened intently, her bright silver eyes scanning everything intensely, soaking up information. During these walks, Arila shared more about herself and her capabilities. She explained that her people were empathic, able to feel, and sometimes influence the emotions of others. This ability, she said, was meant to foster understanding and peace, but could be overwhelming without proper training, which she was still undergoing when her mission went awry. The more Tom learned about Arila, the more he admired her. Her resilience and willingness to understand and participate in human customs showed a kind of courage he found inspiring. Yet, he noticed that large crowds and loud noises bothered her. She was much more comfortable in the quiet solitude of the farm. One evening, after a day spent introducing Arila to the local town, which had proved to be a bit too much for her, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Arila seemed pensive, and Tom decided to ask her about her thoughts on human emotions, given her empathic nature. "It's overwhelming at times," Arila confessed. "Your emotions are so complex, so intense. Back home, emotions are more harmonized. Here, it's like a storm." Tom nodded, trying to imagine what it would be like to feel everyone's emotions around him. "Is there anything I can do to make it easier?" he asked, genuinely concerned. "Just this," Arila smiled softly, gesturing around them. "Quiet moments like these help a lot. And you, Tom, you are calm. It helps me feel calm, too." Their conversation drifted to more personal topics, and Arila expressed her gratitude for Tom's kindness with a sincerity that moved him deeply. It was during these early days that the foundation of trust was built between them, a trust that would become essential as challenges arose. As the stars began to appear in the twilight sky, Tom realized how much Arila had changed his once lonely existence. She had brought a sense of purpose and excitement to his life that he hadn't known he was missing. And for Arila, Tom had become her anchor in this strange new world, a symbol of safety and friendship in the vastness of the unknown. As the weeks passed, Tom and Arila continued to explore the rich tapestry of human culture together. Tom, determined to provide Arila with a broad understanding of Earth and its customs, decided to introduce her to various aspects of human life that extended beyond the confines of his farm. Each new experience was designed to gently acclimate Arila to human society while catering to her unique sensitivities. One sunny afternoon, Tom organized a small cultural day at his home, inviting a few close friends and neighbors who were curious and open-minded about his unusual guest. The gathering was small and intimate, ensuring Arila wouldn't feel overwhelmed by too many new faces or emotions. The day was filled with music, a universal language that Tom hoped would bridge the gap between their worlds. Arila was particularly enchanted by the sound of the guitar. Tom played several classic Earth melodies, explaining the history and emotions behind each song. Arila, in turn, attempted to replicate the sounds with her voice, her alien vocal cords producing a hauntingly beautiful melody that mesmerized the small audience. Food played a central role in the day's activities. Tom prepared a variety of dishes, each representing different Earth cuisines. Arila was intrigued by the diversity of flavors and textures, finding particular delight in a simple dish of pasta with tomato sauce, marveling at its robust simplicity. She shared that in her culture, food was more about nourishment than enjoyment, and the concept of flavor was novel to her. During the event, Arila tentatively shared some customs from her own world. She demonstrated a traditional dance of her people, a flowing, graceful movement that mirrored the harmony they sought in all aspects of life. Her performance, coupled with a brief explanation of her planet's emphasis on balance and community, offered the guests a glimpse into her culture's serene beauty. Later, as the sun set, the group gathered around a fire pit. The conversation turned to stories. Personal tales from Tom's friends intermingled with Arila's stories of Verilis, her home planet. Through these stories, Arila began to understand the depth of human experience, the joys, the sorrows, and the myriad shades in between. This sharing of culture and personal history deepened the bond between Arila and the community. It also allowed Arila to hone her empathic abilities, learning to navigate the complex emotional waters without becoming overwhelmed. Tom watched proudly as Arila interacted with his friends, her confidence growing with each passing moment. As the evening drew to a close, Arila expressed her gratitude for the experience. "Today was enlightening," she told Tom as they cleaned up. "I feel I understand your world a little better, and hopefully you understand mine too." Tom smiled, realizing how much Arila had opened his eyes to the beauty of sharing and learning between cultures. "It's just the beginning," he assured her. "There's so much more to see, to learn, and to experience." As they stood there, under the starlit sky of New Haven, it was clear that this cultural exchange had become a turning point in their relationship. It had not only helped Arila adjust to human society, but had also created a mutual respect and understanding that would support them in the challenges that lay ahead. As autumn painted the leaves of New Haven with fiery hues, the bond between Tom and Arila deepened, strengthened by their shared experiences and the cultural bridges they had built together. Their days flowed into each other, filled with small discoveries and quiet moments that wove a rich tapestry of companionship. One crisp morning, as they walked through the woods surrounding Tom's farm, Arila paused, her attention drawn to a cluster of wildflowers nodding gently in the breeze. She reached out, touching the petals with a kind of reverence. "On Verilise, we have a flower not unlike this one," she remarked, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "It blooms just before the rains, covering the hills in a wave of blue." Tom watched her, struck by the melancholy in her tone. It was moments like this that reminded him of Arila's isolation, far from everything familiar. Moved by a desire to comfort her, he suggested, "Why don't you teach me more about Verilise? We could spend the day sharing stories about our homes." Grateful for the gesture, Arila agreed, and they spent the day exchanging tales of their worlds. Tom described Earth's oceans and mountains, its cities bustling with life and lights. Arila spoke of Arila's crystal forests and the harmonious cities that spiraled skyward, glowing with bioluminescent light. As they shared, a profound sense of mutual understanding grew between them, a bridge spanning across the stars. The evening found them back at Tom's house, sitting by the fireplace. The warmth of the fire seemed to echo the warmth growing in their hearts, a silent acknowledgement of the unique connection they shared. Arila's gaze lingered on Tom, filled with a mix of admiration and a burgeoning affection that she was only beginning to understand. Tom, feeling the intensity of her gaze, took a deep breath and broached a topic that had been on his mind for days. "Arila, have you ever experienced anything like love? Back on Verilise, I mean?" he asked gently, cautious not to overstep the boundaries of their friendship. Arila considered his question, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "Verilians do not experience love as humans do. Our relationships are based more on mutual respect and the balance of the community. But," she hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I believe I am beginning to understand it now. Because of you?" The admission hung in the air, charged with an unspoken emotion. Tom reached out, his hand brushing hers, an offer of support and perhaps more. Arila's hand trembled slightly under his touch, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she moved closer, driven by a desire to explore this new, stirring sensation. "Tom," she began, her voice steadier now, "I want to understand more about this love. Will you help me?" Tom's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, Arila, I'll help you. We'll explore it together, slowly and carefully." That night, as they sat by the fire, discussing human emotions and Verilian perceptions, the foundation of their relationship shifted subtly but irrevocably. It was no longer just about cultural exchange or simple companionship. It was about exploring the deeper, more intimate aspects of being. They were no longer just friends, but potential explorers on the frontier of interstellar emotion and human connection. As the New Haven winter approached, the air grew crisp and the nights lengthened, providing Tom and Arila more time by the warmth of the fireplace, enveloped in the soft glow and quiet of the farmhouse. The depth of their conversations grew, weaving intricate threads of trust and understanding between them. Tom had come to look forward to these evenings, finding a joy in Arila's curiosity and her unique perspective on the world. One such evening, as they settled into their usual spots by the fire, Arila broached a subject they had danced around since her confession of wanting to understand love. "Tom," she began, her voice a mix of determination and nervousness, "I've been reading about human touch, how it can convey comfort, friendship, and sometimes more. I think I am ready to understand this aspect as well. If you are willing." Tom felt a surge of warmth that wasn't from the fire. He had grown deeply fond of Arila, her presence a comforting constant in his life. "Of course, Arila. We can start with something simple, like a hug. It's a common way humans show affection and comfort." Arila nodded, her usual poise mingled with a visible excitement. She stood, a bit hesitant, and Tom rose to meet her. "Just relax and follow my lead," he instructed gently. As they embraced, Tom felt Arila stiffen briefly before relaxing into the hug. Her body was warm, the contact different from anything he'd experienced, her presence both calming and invigorating. They pulled away after a moment, and Arila's face was lit with a new understanding. "That was very comforting," she admitted, a smile spreading across her features. "I can see why it's valued among your people." Encouraged by her reaction, Tom suggested, "There are other types of touch that convey different meanings, like holding hands, for instance. It's a way to offer support or show solidarity." Curious, Arila extended her hand, palm up, in invitation. Tom took her hand, their fingers intertwining. Arila examined their joined hands, then looked up at Tom with a spark of amusement in her eyes. "This is nice, too. It makes me feel connected, not just to you, but somehow to myself." As the night deepened, they continued exploring basic human gestures of affection, hand-holding, gentle touches on the arm, and another hug, this time initiated by Arila. With each touch, Arila's understanding of human expressions of love deepened, and so did their bond. Each gesture was a revelation, a step closer in a dance that was becoming increasingly intimate. Feeling a profound connection, and recognizing the mutual affection that had blossomed between them, Tom was moved to express his feelings. "Arila, these past weeks, getting to know you, helping you understand us, it's made me realize how much I care about you. You've brought so much light into my life." Arila's response was soft, filled with the warmth that had characterized so many of their exchanges. "Tom, I am still learning about human emotions, but I feel a great deal for you as well. This exploration of touch, of connection, it's opened up a new world for me, one I am eager to explore further with you." That night, as they said goodnight, there was a promise of more to come, a promise to continue exploring their emotions, both human and Varelian, and to see where this new path would lead them. For the first time, Arila went to bed with a sense of anticipation for what was to come, her last thoughts before sleep filled with the warmth of Tom's touch and the novel sensation of human affection. As the relationship between Tom and Arila deepened, a palpable tension of anticipation grew between them, charged with the promise of exploring their connection further. Both were acutely aware of the burgeoning feelings that had begun to surface, feelings that were as intense as they were new, especially for Arila, who was experiencing human-like emotions for the first time. One chilly evening, after a day spent helping Tom with winter preparations around the farm, they found themselves in front of the fireplace, the warmth doing little to calm the fluttering excitement in Arila's chest. She had been reading more about human relationships, about intimacy, and the sharing of personal spaces. With each page, her curiosity and her feelings for Tom grew. Sitting close to Tom, Arila turned to him, her voice steady but her eyes betraying a nervous anticipation. "Tom, I've been learning about the significance of sharing personal spaces in human culture. It is said to be a form of deep trust and intimacy. Would it be all right if I spent the night here with you? I think it would help me understand better Tom, feeling a rush of emotions, nodded. He had sensed this moment coming and had wrestled with his own uncertainties about crossing such a personal boundary. Yet, seeing Arila's earnest desire to understand and share more deeply pushed any hesitations aside. Yes, Arila, I'd like that. I think it's a good step for us. As the fire crackled softly in the background, they prepared for bed, an air of solemnity mingling with their excitement. Tom provided Arila with one of his shirts to wear, a simple act that felt profoundly intimate. Arila accepted it with a quiet thank you, touched by the gesture. In Tom's bedroom, under the soft glow of the bedside lamp, they faced each other nervously on the bed. Tom spoke first, breaking the silence. We can start just by lying here together, maybe talking until you fall asleep. Whatever feels comfortable. Arila nodded, and they adjusted under the covers, lying side by side. As they settled, their hands found each other, fingers intertwining naturally, a comforting warmth passing between them. They talked softly about everything and nothing, memories, hopes, the strange and wonderful journey that had brought them to this moment. Gradually, the conversation slowed, and they were left in a comfortable silence. Arila turned to face Tom, studying his features in the dim light. The proximity was new, thrilling in its intimacy. Gently, guided by an impulse that felt both alien and incredibly right, she leaned in and kissed him. The kiss was a discovery, soft and tentative at first, then deepening with a passion that surprised them both. Arila felt a rush of emotions, her empathic abilities mingling with her personal feelings, intensifying the experience. For Tom, kissing Arila felt like connecting with something extraordinary, unfamiliar, yet profoundly right. As they pulled away, they looked at each other with new understanding, their breaths mingling in the cool air of the room. I never knew, Arila whispered, lost for words, her heart full of emotions she was only beginning to understand. Neither did I, Tom whispered back, his voice thick with emotion. He pulled her close, and Arila nestled into his embrace, feeling safe and cherished. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, the boundaries of their worlds blurred into insignificance. That night was a profound turning point, marking not just a step towards deeper intimacy, but a fusion of two beings learning to love across the vast expanse of cultural and cosmic distances. The night Tom and Arila shared marked a profound deepening of their relationship. However, it also heralded the beginning of new challenges that neither was fully prepared for. As their private connection grew stronger, external pressures began to intrude upon the idyllic world they created. The morning after their night together, while the first light of dawn cast a gentle glow through the curtains, Tom and Arila were jolted awake by the sound of vehicles approaching the farm. Tom peered out the window to see several trucks rolling up his driveway, dust billowing behind them. His heart sank as he recognized the vehicles bearing the insignia of the local government authority. People he had hoped wouldn't involve themselves in his affairs, at least not so soon. Arila sensed Tom's sudden anxiety, feeling a ripple of fear through their still fresh emotional connection. "What's happening, Tom?" she asked, her voice steady despite the apprehension. "It's the local authorities," Tom replied, quickly pulling on his clothes. "They must have heard about you. I knew this might happen, but I didn't expect it so soon. Stay here. I'll handle this." Tom met the officials outside, where he was greeted by a stern-faced woman, Agent Harris, who led the delegation. "Mr. Thompson, we've been informed you're harboring an unregistered alien entity," she began, without preamble. "You need to hand her over for evaluation and processing. It's for your own safety and for the community's." Tom clenched his fists, struggling to maintain his composure. "Arila's not a threat to anyone. She's here peacefully, and she's my guest," he argued, his voice firm. "The laws don't operate on personal assurances, Mr. Thompson. You know this," Agent Harris countered. "She needs to be assessed by our experts. There are protocols." Realizing the argument was futile, and that resisting might make things worse, Tom nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but I'm coming with her, and I want assurances she'll be treated well." Agent Harris agreed, though her expression offered little comfort. As they prepared to leave, Tom returned to Arila, explaining the situation. Arila, understanding the gravity of the circumstances, nodded calmly, trusting Tom's judgment. Together, they drove to the local government facility, a cold, imposing building that felt a world away from the warmth of the farmhouse. At the facility, Arila was subjected to a series of tests and interviews. Tom was allowed to stay by her side, a silent pillar of support. The officials were particularly interested in her empathic abilities, probing with questions that seemed as much about their potential utility as about any threat she might pose. Throughout the ordeal, Arila remained composed, answering questions with an honesty that was disarming. Her dignity and grace under pressure only increased Tom's admiration for her, reinforcing his resolve to protect her, no matter the cost. After several tense hours, the officials concluded their assessment. To Tom's relief, they determined that Arila posed no immediate threat and could remain on Earth under supervision. However, the stipulation was clear. She would be closely monitored, and any misstep could lead to more severe consequences. Driving back to the farm, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the road. The day's events had taken a toll on both of them, leaving a residue of unease that neither had felt before. But as Arila reached over to squeeze Tom's hand, a simple gesture laden with meaning, a silent agreement was reaffirmed between them. They would face whatever came next together, fortified by the love and understanding that had blossomed in the most unexpected of circumstances. After the unsettling events at the government facility, Tom and Arila returned to the farm, both weary but relieved to be back in the familiar surroundings of their sanctuary. The ordeal had tested their resolve, yet it had also cemented their bond, making them realize the depth of their commitment to each other. As they pulled into the driveway, the sight of the farmhouse bathed in the soft light of the setting sun was a welcome sight, promising a sense of normalcy and peace. Over the next few days, Arila and Tom discussed at length what their future might hold. The government's decision to allow Arila to stay under supervision was a double-edged sword. It granted her freedom on Earth, but came with the weight of constant monitoring. They both knew that their lives would never be quite the same, yet they were determined to navigate this new reality together. Tom, ever the planner, began to devise ways to integrate Arila more into the community, believing that familiarity would breed acceptance. Arila was keen to contribute too, eager to use her empathic abilities to assist in local mediations and community service. Slowly, their efforts began to bear fruit, with Arila gaining a cautious but curious acceptance from many in the local community. Meanwhile, Arila continued to explore her feelings and the human concept of love, which she now experienced profoundly with Tom. Their relationship deepened further, grounded in mutual respect and a shared vision for the future. They spent their evenings talking, planning, and often simply enjoying the quiet companionship that had first drawn them together. One crisp morning, as they walked through the fields, Arila stopped and turned to Tom. Tom, back on Verilis, when someone decides that their life is permanently bound to another's, there is a tradition, a ceremony of commitment, not unlike your human marriage. Tom listened intently, his heart swelling with hope and affection. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" he asked, a smile spreading across his face. Arila nodded, her silver eyes shining with emotion. "Yes, Tom, I am ready, if you are, to commit to you, to this life we are building together. I want us to be partners, in all the ways that matter." Overwhelmed with joy, Tom took Arila in his arms, spinning her around as they both laughed. "Yes, Arila, absolutely yes," he replied, his voice filled with emotion. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as they planned a small ceremony. They decided on a simple celebration at the farm, inviting close friends and those in the community who had shown them kindness and support. The day of the ceremony was perfect, with clear skies and a gentle breeze. The local pastor, who had become a good friend, officiated the ceremony, which blended human traditions with Varelian customs, symbolizing the union of their two worlds. As they stood before their friends, exchanging vows and intertwining ribbons, a Varelian symbol of connected lives. Tom and Arila felt a profound sense of unity and hope. The challenges they had faced seemed to fade into the background, overshadowed by the love and acceptance that enveloped them. The story closes as Arila and Tom, now officially partners, stand together watching the sunset, their hands clasped tightly. Their journey had been unexpected and fraught with challenges, but it had led them to this moment, this feeling of completeness. No matter what the future held, they knew they would face it together, their love a beacon guiding them through whatever storms might come.